They're my real family now. Real family?
I always knew he was hiding something. But I never imagined this. This amendment will ensure your family is protected.
But my son,
It's the only way, ma'am. Sign here.
it has to be done. I understand.
My daughter didn't even lower her voice when she said it. Mom, I'm married now. Grant's family is my real family. You need to stop expecting everything to revolve around you. The entire dinner table went silent. I was 69 years old, 6 years widowed, and sitting among people I had helped my daughter impress more times than she would ever admit. Still, I swallowed the humiliation and reached for my water. Then Patricia, my daughter's mother-in-law, smiled and casually asked, "Megan will eventually handle your house and everything in your trust, won't she?" My hand froze around the glass. I had never discussed my trust with Patricia, and suddenly my daughter's cruel words weren't the most frightening thing I'd heard that evening. That night, I didn't call Megan. I called the woman who had written my trust. Before I tell you what she discovered, if you've ever had someone you love make you feel like an outsider in your own family, please like this video and subscribe. And tell me in the comments what would you have done in my place. I'd also love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Sometimes it helps to remember that somewhere someone else understands exactly how this kind of hurt feels, the daughter I thought I knew. If you had met Megan when she was 10 years old, you never would have believed that one day I would sit across from her at a dinner table and hear her tell me I was no longer her real family. I wouldn't have believed it either. For most of my life, being Megan's mother was one of the surest things I knew about myself. She was our only child. William and I had tried for years before she came along, and when she finally arrived, we promised each other we would give her something neither of us had grown up with: stability. Not luxury, not everything she wanted. Stability. William worked as a civil engineer for nearly 35 years. I spent most of my career as a public school librarian in Richmond. We were comfortable, but we were never flashy people. William drove his cars until they started making noises even the mechanic couldn't identify. I clipped coupons long after we could afford not to. We saved before we spent, paid off our mortgage early, invested steadily, and taught Megan that money was supposed to create security, not status. At least I thought we had taught her that. When Megan was young, she was affectionate in a way that made motherhood feel easy. She left little notes in my purse. "Love you, Mom. Have a good day." When she went away to college, called almost every Sunday evening. Sometimes she wanted advice, sometimes she needed money, sometimes she simply wanted to tell me about a professor she hated or a boy she liked. William used to tease me about how quickly I answered the phone. "You know she'll survive 3 rings, Aubrey." I know, but I never let it ring 3 times. Maybe that was the beginning of my mistake. Not loving her. Never that. But perhaps I taught Megan without meaning to that I would always answer. Always fix. Always make room. When William died 6 years ago, Megan became the person I leaned on most. Cancer took him faster than either of us expected. For 39 years, William had been the person sitting across from me at breakfast. The person whose shoes I stepped over in the hallway. The person who remembered to replace batteries before smoke detectors started chirping at 2 in the morning. Then one day his coffee mug was still in the cabinet, his jacket was still hanging by the back door, and he was gone. Those first months after the funeral were a blur. Megan called every morning. She brought groceries. She sat beside me while I sorted insurance forms and condolence cards. Once she found me crying because I couldn't figure out how to reset the sprinkler timer William had always handled. She didn't laugh. She sat on the kitchen floor beside me and cried too. "I've got you, Mom," she whispered. I believed her, and I want to be fair about something. Megan did not become selfish overnight. There was no single morning when my loving daughter disappeared and some cold stranger took her place. It happened gradually, so gradually that every individual disappointment seemed too small to confront. Megan married Grant Whitmore 3 years after William died. Grant was charming when I first met him. He worked in commercial real estate and had the kind of confidence that made people assume he knew more than they did. He remembered birthdays. He brought wine to dinner. He called me Mrs. Martin until I finally told him that if he was going to marry my daughter, he could call me Aubrey. His parents were different from William and me. Charles and Patricia Whitmore lived in a large home west of Richmond and moved in social circles where people seemed to know which fork to use before they knew whether they liked the food. Charles owned Whitmore Development Group, a regional real estate development company. Patricia served on charity boards and could somehow turn a casual Sunday brunch into an event requiring linen napkins. There was nothing wrong with that. At first, I even liked them. Patricia was polished but gracious. Charles was talkative and funny. They welcomed Megan enthusiastically, and Megan desperately wanted to belong. I saw it before she did. She changed the way she dressed. She learned about wines she'd never cared about. She started talking about clubs, charity galas, and people whose names I didn't recognize. Again, none of that bothered me. Children grow. Their worlds expand. I told myself I should be proud. When Megan and Grant married, William was already gone, and I wanted the wedding to feel joyful despite the empty chair where her father should have been. I contributed generously, not because Megan demanded it, because I wanted to. Later, when they bought their first home together, I helped with part of the down payment. Then Grant experienced a business setback. He had invested in a commercial property partnership that became tied up in permitting delays. Megan called me one evening in tears. They needed $65,000 temporarily. "It's not a gift," she insisted. "We'll pay you back." I told her I knew. I made the loan interest-free. They did repay part of it over time, though, not according to the original schedule. I never pressured them. When Megan needed help with the children, I came. When a babysitter canceled, I came. When she had an important presentation and one of the children had a fever, I came. When Grant's schedule changed unexpectedly, I came. I loved my grandchildren. Helping didn't feel like sacrifice. The problem was that somewhere along the way, helping became my role. Inclusion became optional. The first Thanksgiving after Megan married Grant, she apologized because Patricia had already planned dinner. "Next year, Mom." The following year, Charles's brother was visiting from Atlanta. It would be awkward to change everything. The third year, the Whitmores rented a house in the Blue Ridge Mountains. There wasn't enough room. Christmas changed too. Then birthdays. Then Easter. I became skilled at saying, "Don't worry about me." And Megan became skilled at believing me. She still called regularly. But increasingly, the calls began with a request. Could I pick up the children? Could I meet a repairman at their house? Could I loan her something? Could I handle an appointment? Could I contribute to this? Could I help with that? I rarely said no. That was why her words at Patricia and Charles's anniversary dinner hurt so badly. Her real family. I had spent years making sure Megan never had to choose between me and the Whitmores. Apparently, she had chosen anyway. But after Patricia mentioned my trust, another memory began bothering me. It had happened about 4 months earlier. Megan and I were sitting in my kitchen drinking coffee when she suddenly asked, "Mom, if something happened to you, who handles everything?" I remember laughing. That sounds ominous. I'm serious. She said she and Grant were updating their own estate documents, and it had made her realize she didn't know much about mine. I told her everything was organized. "Rebecca has copies. You know where my emergency folder is. But who's actually in charge?" "You are eventually." Her expression changed, only slightly. At the time I interpreted it as concern. Now I wasn't sure. What does eventually mean? If I die or if I become legally unable to manage things myself, depending on the trust provisions? She nodded. Then she asked, "And everything is still in the trust?" "Most of what should be." "The house too?" "Yes." She stirred her coffee. "Do you know approximately what everything is worth now?" That question had made me uncomfortable. "Megan, why are you asking?" She immediately smiled. "No reason. I just think families should know these things before there's an emergency." It sounded sensible, responsible even. A week later, she asked whether she could have a copy of the trust. I said no. Not because I distrusted her. William had always believed detailed estate documents should remain private unless someone genuinely needed them. Instead, I gave Megan a short estate summary. It listed Rebecca's contact information, insurance details, account locations, emergency instructions, and enough information for Megan to know that the Martin Family Living Trust existed and that she was named successor trustee. It did not give her authority. It did not give her ownership. And it certainly did not give her permission to discuss my finances with her husband's family. Sitting alone in my house after that anniversary dinner, I started remembering other questions. Grant asking whether my house still had a mortgage. Patricia once commenting that Richmond property values had been very kind to me. Charles joking at Christmas that Megan would someday be the wealthy one in the family. I had laughed. Why wouldn't I? They were family, or at least I had thought we were. I went upstairs to the small room William had used as his office. I hadn't changed much in there. His old wooden desk remained beneath the window. One drawer still stuck halfway unless you lifted it slightly before pulling. Inside was the estate folder. I placed it on the desk but didn't open it immediately. For a moment I just stared at my husband's handwriting on the label. Martin Family Trust. William had written those words years before anyone named Whitmore entered our lives. For the first time I wondered whether Megan had been asking about my estate because she wanted to prepare for an emergency, or because someone else wanted to know what she would someday control. That distinction suddenly mattered more than I could explain. I thought about Patricia's casual confidence. Megan will eventually handle all of that for you, won't she? Not might. Not would she. Will. She already knew. And if Patricia knew that much, what else had Megan told her? I placed my hand on the folder. Until that evening, I had been thinking about my daughter's questions individually. A house, a trust, a successor trustee, an estimated value. Each one had seemed harmless when it was asked. Together they felt different. Looking back, the questions hadn't started after that dinner. They had started months earlier. And suddenly, I needed to know why. My lawyer asked one question. Rebecca Sloane's office had not changed much in 20 years. The same dark wooden bookshelves covered one wall. The same framed photograph of the James River hung behind her desk. Even the little ceramic bowl of peppermints near the reception area seemed to have survived every renovation. William used to take one every time we came. I almost reached for one that morning. Then I remembered why I was there. Rebecca stepped out of her office herself when she saw me. Aubrey. She hugged me briefly. Not professionally, personally. Rebecca had been our attorney long enough to know when I was coming in for paperwork, and when I was coming in because something was wrong. Her assistant closed the door behind us. Rebecca sat across from me and folded her hands. I was told you have questions about your successor trustee. I do. Is Megan all right? The question caught me off guard. As far as I know. Rebecca waited. That was one of the things I had always liked about her. She didn't fill silence simply because it became uncomfortable. So I started with the anniversary dinner. I told her about the Christmas conversation. I repeated Megan's words exactly. Grant's family is my real family. Even saying them aloud made my throat tighten. Rebecca's expression softened. I'm sorry. I know children grow up, I said. I know marriage changes priorities. I'm not asking Megan to spend every holiday with me. You don't have to defend being hurt. I'm not here because I'm angry. I know. I don't want to change legal documents because my daughter said something cruel. Rebecca nodded. Then why are you here? I told her what Patricia had said next. Megan will eventually handle your house and everything in your trust, won't she? Rebecca stopped taking notes. That tiny movement frightened me more than any dramatic reaction could have. She said that almost exactly. Have you ever discussed the trust with Patricia Charles Grant? Not intentionally. Her eyes narrowed slightly. What does that mean? I explained the questions Grant had asked over the past year. Whether my house was mortgage-free, whether it was held in the trust, whether William had left most assets in trust. Rebecca listened without interrupting. Then I told her about Megan asking for a copy of the trust and about the limited estate summary I had given her. Did the summary include asset values, number account numbers, number distribution provisions, number good? That one word made me sit straighter. Rebecca, am I missing something? She leaned back. Possibly. But I don't want to create a problem before we know there is one. That's exactly what I'm trying not to do. She nodded. Then she asked one question. Has anyone recently asked you about the trust's liquidity? I stared at her. For a moment I genuinely didn't understand why the word bothered me. Then I remembered. Grant and I had been sitting on my back porch in May. Megan had taken the children upstairs to find an old box of toys. Grant and I were drinking iced tea. He had been talking about retirement planning. At least I thought that was what we were talking about. He asked whether I planned to remain in my house permanently. I said I hoped so. Then he mentioned how much capital older homeowners sometimes had trapped in real estate. I laughed and told him I wasn't interested in borrowing against my home. That's not what I mean, he said. Then he asked, is most of your trust tied up in property, or is it pretty liquid? At the time I had shrugged. A little of both. That was all I said. Or at least all I remembered saying. I looked at Rebecca. Yes. Who Grant? When? A few months ago. What was the context? I told her. Rebecca picked up her pen again. Anything else? He asked whether the house was in the trust. Same conversation, I think so. Did he ask about investments? Not specifically. Approximate value num. I hesitated. Megan did. Rebecca looked up. When I explained the kitchen conversation. For several seconds Rebecca said nothing. Finally I asked, why does liquidity matter? It might not. Rebecca. She removed her glasses. Aubrey, I want to separate two issues. The first is your relationship with Megan. I can't advise you as a mother. The second is the administration of your trust. I can advise you there. All right. You are the current trustee. As long as you are competent and acting within the trust, Megan has no authority merely because she is named successor trustee. I understood that last night. Good. She can't sell my house number access investments. Not because she's successor trustee. Borrow against the trust. Number promise trust assets to someone. One not legitimately. I exhaled. Then what am I afraid of? Rebecca paused before answering. Possibly the wrong thing. That was not comforting. She continued. The immediate danger may not be that Megan can take anything. She can't. But people sometimes make financial decisions based on expected future wealth. Inheritance. Business succession. Beneficial interests. Future control. Sometimes those expectations are presented more confidently than they should be. I thought about Charles, the future wealthy woman in the family. What do you mean by future control? If someone tells a lender or investor that they expect to become trustee of a substantial family trust someday, that statement can create an impression. But it's not their money. Correct. And being trustee wouldn't make it their money. Also correct. Then why would anyone care? Because not everyone understands the distinction. And sometimes people who do understand it still prefer language that sounds stronger than the legal reality. A chill moved through me. You think Megan has been telling people she controls my money? I didn't say that. Do you think Grant has? I don't know. I appreciated that answer even though I hated it. Rebecca opened a copy of my trust. She turned to the successor trustee provisions. Let me show you something. She explained the language carefully. If I died, Megan would become trustee under the existing structure. If I became incapacitated under the standards described in the document, successor administration could also be triggered. But even then, she would have fiduciary duties. She would not simply become the owner of everything. And as beneficiary, I asked. Her beneficial rights are governed separately. So even after I die, successor trustee does not mean she gets to do whatever she wants. Exactly. I stared at Megan's name. I think she may believe otherwise. Then that is worth addressing. I thought about William's note. I took it from my purse and handed it to Rebecca. She read it once. Her expression did not change. Do you know why he wrote that no? Did he ever say anything to you? Rebecca returned the note. If William had instructed me to conceal something relevant to your legal interests, we would be having a different conversation. I'm not going to speculate about what he meant based on one sentence. It was exactly the answer William would have respected. I looked down at the trust. Can I change the successor trustee? Yes. The answer came so quickly that I looked up. Without Megan, yes. Without telling her first, yes. Without her permission, Rebecca almost smiled. Aubrey, this is your estate plan. The simplicity of that sentence hit me strangely. For months, perhaps years, I had thought of the trust as the thing Megan would eventually inherit. Rebecca was reminding me what it was before that. Mine. Mine to manage, mine to protect, mine to change. Who would replace her? That depends on what you want. I don't want another relative dragged into this. Then I would suggest considering an independent professional fiduciary. A stranger. A professional. That sounds cold. It can feel that way. What would they do if the successor role were triggered? They would administer the trust according to its terms. They would have fiduciary obligations. They would not be emotionally dependent on Megan Grant you or the Whitmores. And Megan could still inherit absolutely. I looked at her. So I can leave my daughter what William and I intended to leave her without giving her control over the administration. Yes. Something inside me shifted. Not relief exactly, more like a door opening. For years I had unconsciously treated inheritance and control as one decision. Rebecca had just separated them. What about my grandchildren? Their provisions can remain intact. I don't want to punish them. You don't have to. I don't even know if I want to punish Megan. Then don't. Her answer was so immediate that I blinked. Rebecca leaned forward. If you change this, Aubrey, do it because you believe independent administration is safer. Don't do it because Megan hurt you at dinner. That's what I'm afraid of. Then wait until you're certain. I looked toward the window. Outside, people moved along the sidewalk, carrying coffee, checking phones, living ordinary Thursday mornings. My life looked ordinary too. A retired librarian, a paid-off house, a daughter, 2 grandchildren, a trust created by a husband who had spent his entire adult life planning carefully. And suddenly I was sitting in an attorney's office wondering whether people I had welcomed into my family were making plans around my death. I keep thinking about what she said, I admitted. About her real family. Yes. Rebecca waited. I wanted to change everything the moment I got home. But you didn't. No. That matters. I don't want revenge. Then don't design your estate plan as revenge. What am I designing it as? Protection? I looked again at Megan's name. She'll think I don't trust her. Maybe. She'll think I'm taking something away. Are you? I considered the question carefully. Her inheritance would remain. Her children's protections would remain. The only thing I was considering removing was authority she did not currently possess. No, I said slowly. Not exactly. Rebecca nodded. You're not deciding whether Megan is your daughter. You're deciding whether she is the best future fiduciary. William's handwritten sentence came back to me. The person we love most. The person best qualified to protect what we built. My eyes burned. William knew. William prepared, Rebecca corrected gently. There's a difference. I folded the note and returned it to my purse. Prepare the amendment. Rebecca studied me. You don't have to sign it today. I know. I actually recommend that you don't. That surprised me. Why go home, sleep on it? Give yourself enough time to know whether this decision survives the emotion. And if it does, come back. I stood. At the door I turned around. Rebecca. Yes. If I replace Megan, does she have any legal right to stop me? No. Does Grant number Charles or Patricia number? I nodded. Then Rebecca said the sentence I carried with me all the way home. Aubrey, you are not deciding who you love. She tapped the trust document gently. You are deciding who gets authority. For the first time I understood that leaving someone money and giving them control were 2 completely different decisions. And I was beginning to believe William had understood that, long before I did. I changed one name. I did not sign the amendment the next day, or the day after that. Rebecca had told me to wait until the decision survived the emotion, so that was exactly what I did. For 3 mornings I woke before sunrise, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with William's handwritten note beside me. Never confuse the person we love most with the person best qualified to protect what we built. The first morning I was still angry. I could hear Megan's voice from the anniversary dinner. Grant's family is my real family. Every time I remembered it, I wanted to pick up the phone and tell Rebecca to remove Megan from everything. Not just as trustee, everything. But that would have been revenge. And revenge was not what William had spent his life planning for. So I waited. The second morning, the anger softened enough for guilt to move in. I began imagining Megan discovering the change. Would she think I had stopped loving her? Would she believe I was trying to control her marriage? Would she tell my grandchildren that Grandma had become bitter after Grandpa died? That possibility hurt more than I wanted to admit. For years I had been careful not to become the stereotype of the lonely widowed mother who demanded too much from her adult child. I never told Megan she had to spend holidays with me. I never complained when Patricia got Mother's Day brunch and I received a phone call later that afternoon. I never reminded Megan of the wedding money, the down payment, the $65,000 loan, or the hundreds of smaller things I had done. I had tried so hard not to make love feel like an obligation that perhaps I had gone too far in the opposite direction. Maybe I had taught Megan that I required nothing, not even respect. By the third morning, something had changed. I still loved her. I was still hurt. But when I thought about replacing her as successor trustee, I no longer felt angry. I felt calm. That was how I knew. I called Rebecca. "I'm ready." She did not ask whether I was sure. She simply said, "Come in at 2." The amendment was shorter than I expected. That surprised me. Something that had occupied almost every thought for several days was reduced to a handful of carefully drafted pages. Rebecca went through each provision with me. Megan Whitmore would no longer serve as successor trustee. Instead, a professional fiduciary, through Commonwealth Fiduciary Services, would assume that role if the conditions for successor administration were ever triggered. Rebecca would serve as trust protector under narrowly defined provisions, giving her limited oversight authority if circumstances required intervention. Nothing about Megan's beneficial interest was eliminated. Nothing about my grandchildren's protections changed. I stopped Rebecca there. "Explain that again." "Megan remains a beneficiary under the terms we discussed. So if I died tomorrow, Aubrey, I'm not planning to. Good. But if I did, the distribution structure remains intact. Megan's beneficial interest is not being removed by this amendment, and the grandchildren still protected." I looked down at the papers. "So all I'm changing is who manages it." "Essentially, yes. We're also strengthening some independent administration provisions around major distributions, but the fundamental change is fiduciary control." I thought about the difference. If I had told Megan, "You're out of the trust," that would have been punishment. Instead, I was saying something much narrower. "I love you. I may still leave you what your father and I intended, but you will not control the machinery." That felt different. Rebecca must have seen something in my expression. "You can still walk away," she said. "I know. You can take another week." "No. Then I need to ask you formally. Are you making this decision voluntarily?" "Yes." "Has anyone pressured you to make it?" "No." "Do you understand the amendment?" "Yes." "Do you understand that Megan may be upset when she eventually learns about it?" That question lingered. "Yes." Rebecca nodded. She placed the signature page in front of me. For a second, my hand would not move. I thought about Megan at 7 years old, asleep against my shoulder during a thunderstorm. Megan at 16, crying because her first boyfriend broke her heart. Megan at 22, calling me after her first real job offer. Megan standing beside William's hospital bed holding his hand. Megan sitting on my kitchen floor after his funeral telling me, "I've got you, Mom." Then I thought about Patricia asking whether Megan would eventually handle my house in trust. I signed. Aubrey Martin. That was all it took. One signature. One name removed from one responsibility. Rebecca signed where required and organized the documents. When it was finished, I expected to feel powerful. Instead, I cried. Not loudly. Just a few tears I could not stop. Rebecca passed me a tissue. "I feel terrible." "Why, she's my daughter." "Yes." What kind of mother does this? The kind who reviewed her estate plan. I gave her a tired look. You make it sound very ordinary. Legally it is. It doesn't feel ordinary. No, she said. Family rarely does. I folded the tissue. What if I'm wrong about all of this? Then you have an independent professional trustee managing a substantial trust someday. That is not a catastrophe. What if Megan never told the Whitmores anything inappropriate? Then this still doesn't take away her inheritance. What if she thinks I don't trust her? Rebecca leaned back. Aubrey, trust is not one thing. I waited. You can trust Megan to love her children and still not trust her to administer $3.8 million under pressure. You can trust her intentions and question her judgment. You can love someone without assigning them every responsibility available. That sounded like something William might have said. I looked at my signature again. So this isn't punishment. It doesn't have to be. What is it? Rebecca closed the folder. You're separating love from financial control. I repeated those words silently all the way home. For the first time since the anniversary dinner, I slept through the night. Friday passed quietly. Then Saturday. Megan sent a photograph of my grandchildren at soccer practice. I responded with 3 hearts. She replied, "They miss you." I almost asked when I could see them. Instead, I wrote, "I miss them too." Nothing else happened. Sunday morning, I went to church, stopped at the grocery store, and spent the afternoon trimming the rose bushes William had planted along the back fence. By Monday, I felt almost foolish. Maybe I had connected things that were never connected. Maybe Patricia knew about the trust because Megan had mentioned it casually. Maybe Grant's financial questions had been exactly what he claimed, harmless conversation. Maybe replacing Megan was simply prudent planning that would never matter. I even considered calling Rebecca and asking whether I could reverse the amendment. Not because I thought it was wrong, because peace was seductive, especially false peace. Then Tuesday afternoon my phone rang. Megan. I smiled automatically when I saw her name. Hi, sweetheart. There was no greeting. Mom, did you change the trust? My smile disappeared. I stood in the kitchen holding a dish towel. How do you know that? Did you? I remembered Rebecca telling me I was under no obligation to discuss private estate changes immediately. Yes. Silence. Then Megan inhaled sharply. What did you change? I'm not discussing the details over the phone. Did you remove me? The panic in her voice surprised me. From what, Mom? You need to be specific. The trust. You're still a beneficiary. Another silence. Not relief. That was what struck me. If Megan's concern had been inheritance hearing, that she remained a beneficiary should have calmed her. It didn't. Did you change the trustee? I looked out the kitchen window. Yes. Oh my God. Megan. When last week? Why would you do that without talking to me? Because it is my estate plan. You don't understand. Then explain it. She did not. Instead, she asked, who did you replace me with? A professional fiduciary? Her reaction was immediate. No. I almost laughed from confusion. No, you need to change it back. I don't need to do anything. Mom, please. You're angry about what I said at dinner, and I told you that you misunderstood me. This wasn't an impulsive decision. You don't know what you're doing. My grip tightened around the phone. Be careful, Megan. I didn't mean it like that. You just told a 69-year-old woman she doesn't understand her own estate plan. That's not what I meant. Again. Always the same defense. Not what I meant. Never responsibility for what had actually been said. I took a breath. If you want to talk about our relationship, we can. If you want to discuss my trust, Rebecca can be present. Rebecca knows. The question came so sharply that I stopped. Of course Rebecca knows. She drafted the amendment. Who else knows? There it was. Not why. Not whether her children were still protected. Not whether I had changed my beneficiaries. Who else knows? I lowered the dish towel onto the counter. Why does that matter? It just does. That's not an answer. Did Rebecca contact anyone? Anyone like who? Another pause. Grant. My heartbeat changed. No. His parents know. Are you sure, Megan? What is going on? Nothing. That does not sound like nothing. She spoke faster. I just don't want you making this into some huge family issue because you're upset about dinner. I haven't spoken to Grant, Patricia, or Charles. Good. The relief in her voice was unmistakable and terrifying. Megan. I have to go. No. You called me. I'll come by tomorrow. Tell me what this is about. We should talk in person. The call ended before I could answer. I remained standing in the kitchen. For several seconds I stared at the dark screen of my phone. My first instinct was to call her back. My second was to call Rebecca. I followed the second. Rebecca answered after 2 rings. Aubrey, Megan knows. There was a pause. What did she say? I repeated the conversation. Every question. Every strange hesitation. When I finished, Rebecca was silent. What do you think I asked? I think you should not sign anything Megan brings you. The sentence chilled me. You think she'll bring something I don't know? I'm telling you not to sign anything without letting me review it. All right. And Aubrey. Yes, do not change the amendment back because someone pressures you. I looked toward the hallway leading to William's office. I won't. After we hung up, I replayed Megan's first reaction. Not heartbreak, not anger, fear. She had been afraid that Rebecca might have contacted Grant or his parents, which meant my private estate decision had consequences somewhere outside my estate. I had changed one name, nothing more. Megan still stood to inherit. My grandchildren remained protected. No money had disappeared, no property had been sold. Yet my daughter had reacted as though I had pulled one card from a structure she desperately needed to keep standing. And that was the moment I knew this had never been only about my feelings. Why was she so afraid? Megan arrived at my house the next morning at 8:17. I remember the exact time because I was standing in the kitchen pouring coffee when I heard her car door slam outside. She had said she would come by. She had not said she would arrive before breakfast. When I opened the front door, she was already halfway up the walkway. No Grant. No children. No purse even. Just Megan in black slacks, a cream blouse, and the same anxious expression I had heard through the phone. Can I come in? Of course. She walked past me before I had fully stepped aside. That bothered me. My daughter had entered this house thousands of times. She had grown up here. Her height marks were still penciled inside a closet door upstairs. But that morning she moved through my home as though she had come to contain a problem. Coffee numb. You always want coffee. Mom, please. I closed the front door. All right. She followed me into the kitchen. For a moment neither of us spoke. Megan looked exhausted. There were faint shadows beneath her eyes, and she kept rubbing the side of her thumb with her index finger, something she had done since childhood whenever she was nervous. Part of me wanted to reach across the table and take her hand. That instinct had survived everything. Instead, I waited. Finally, she said, I'm sorry about the dinner. I studied her face. For what? She looked irritated immediately. You know what? I want to hear what you think you're apologizing for. For saying Grant's family is my real family. And hurting your feelings. There was that phrase. My feelings. As though the problem were located entirely inside me. Megan, do you understand why it hurt? I was frustrated. That doesn't answer my question. You were putting me on the spot about Christmas. I asked whether we were still having Christmas Eve together. In front of everyone. At a family dinner. Exactly. I almost smiled at the absurdity. You're saying I shouldn't have asked about family plans at a family dinner. You know what Patricia is like about holidays? No. Apparently I know less about Patricia than Patricia knows about me. Megan looked away. There it was. The reason she had come. Not Christmas. Not the apology. The trust. I sat across from her. Why did Patricia know you were my successor trustee? Megan crossed her arms. I probably mentioned it. When I don't remember. Why? Because families talk. About other people's estate documents. Oh, come on, Mom. No, don't come on, Mom, me. You called yesterday in a panic because I replaced you. Then your first concern was whether Rebecca had spoken to Grant or his parents. I want to know why. I was not in a panic. You told me I needed to change it back. Because you made a major decision while you were upset. I waited several days and met with my attorney. Rebecca only hears your side. My estate plan has one side. Megan stared at me. I saw anger appear, but underneath it was still fear. Who is the new trustee I told you? A professional fiduciary. What company that's between Rebecca and me? I was your successor trustee. I have a right to know. No, you had an expectation of a future role. That is not the same thing as a current right. Her face changed. Did Rebecca tell you to say that she explained my own documents to me? This is unbelievable. What is unbelievable? You're acting like I tried to steal from you. I have never said that. You're treating me like a criminal. I changed an administrative role. You changed it because you don't trust me. I changed it because I decided professional administration was safer. For whom? For everyone. Megan pushed her chair back and stood. She walked toward the window, then turned around. You don't understand how humiliating this is. That surprised me. Humiliating to whom? To me. Why? Because people knew. My heartbeat quickened. What people? She immediately realized her mistake. No one specific. You just said people knew. I mean Grant knew. His parents knew what that I was going to handle things someday. Handle what? Your estate. The casualness of those two words hurt. My estate. Not my life. Not my future. My estate. I kept my voice steady. Why did Grant's parents need to know who would administer my trust after I died? They didn't need to know. Then why do they? Because it came up. How? I don't remember. Megan, what do you want from me? The truth. I'm telling you the truth. No. You're giving me fragments. She pressed both hands against the kitchen counter. You're making this bigger than it is. Then make it smaller. Explain it. She said nothing. I waited. The silence stretched. Finally, Megan sat again. Grant's family has been under a lot of stress. What kind of stress? Business. Charles's company. She looked at me sharply. How do you know I've met Charles? He talks about Whitmore development more than most people talk about their grandchildren. Despite herself, Megan almost smiled. It disappeared quickly. They have a big project, I remember. It's complicated, I'm sure. Grant has been helping his father. With what? Financing, planning, introductions, and my trust. It has nothing to do with your trust. Then why are we discussing Charles's business? Megan rubbed her forehead. Because you keep trying to connect everything. No, Megan, I'm asking questions. You're connecting them for me. That landed. She looked toward the doorway as though considering leaving. I softened my voice. Sweetheart, if someone has done something involving my trust, tell me now. No one has touched your money. I didn't ask whether anyone touched it. No one stole anything. I didn't use the word stole. Then what are you accusing me of? Nothing yet. Yet I am trying very hard not to accuse you of something I don't understand. Megan stood again. You've always done this. I stared at her. Done what made me feel like I'm irresponsible whenever money comes up. I was genuinely stunned. I gave you and Grant $65,000 interest-free. That's exactly what I mean. How does helping you prove I thought you were irresponsible? Because you remember every dollar. I remember $65,000, Megan. Most people would. She grabbed her coat from the back of the chair. This was a mistake. What was coming here? Sit down, I have work. You came here before 8:30 because you were worried about something. Don't leave because I'm finally asking the question you hoped I wouldn't. She froze. I saw it happen. The anger drained just enough for the fear beneath it to become visible again. Megan, I said quietly. What happens because I changed trustees? Nothing. Then why do I need to change it back? Because I'm your daughter. You're still my daughter. Then why give a stranger control after I die, or if I can no longer manage things? That's not the point. Then tell me the point. Her eyes filled with tears. For one terrible second I nearly surrendered. That was our pattern. Megan became distressed. I removed the source of distress. It had worked when she was 6 and afraid of school. It had worked when she was 24 and short on rent. It had worked when she was 37 and Grant needed $65,000. But Megan was 39 now. And I was beginning to understand that rescuing her from discomfort might be one reason she had never learned to sit inside it long enough to tell the truth. So I waited. Finally, she whispered, "You don't understand what this could do to Grant's family." Everything inside me became still. Not could do to her, not could do to my grandchildren. Grant's family. I spoke very slowly. "What does my trust have to do with Grant's family?" Megan looked down. "Nothing directly." Then indirectly. "I shouldn't have said that. But you did. I'm stressed." "About what everything? Does Charles owe money, Mom? Is Whitmore Development in trouble? That is none of your business." "You're right." That surprised her. I continued. "Charles's business is none of my business, which means my trust should be none of Charles's." "It isn't. Then we have no problem." Megan closed her eyes. "Please just put me back." "No." She opened them. "You won't even consider it." "Not until I understand why it matters to people who have no legal relationship to my trust. You're going to ruin everything." There was so much desperation in her voice that I almost didn't recognize her. "What am I ruining my marriage for, one thing?" That struck me harder than I expected. "How could changing my successor trustee destroy your marriage?" "Because Grant thinks—" She stopped. "What does Grant think?" "Forget it." "No. He thinks you're doing this because you hate his family." "I don't hate his family. You've never liked them." "That's not true. You judge Patricia." "I find Patricia intimidating sometimes. That is not hatred. And Charles, I barely know Charles. Grant thinks you resent them because they have money." For the first time that morning I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was ridiculous. "Megan, I have never measured people by their money." "That's easy for you to say. What does that mean?" She looked at me, then away. Again she had said too much. I stood. "I think you should leave." Her face hardened. "Fine. But before you go, understand something." She picked up her coat. "I am not changing the amendment back. You'll regret this. Maybe. But if your marriage can be damaged by who administers my trust after I'm gone, then your marriage has a problem I did not create." She stared at me. I opened the front door. For a moment I thought she might say something else. Instead, she walked outside. At the bottom of the steps, she turned. "You think Rebecca knows everything?" "No, she doesn't." "Then help me understand." Megan shook her head. "You wouldn't understand." She got into her car and drove away. I closed the door but remained standing there. My hands were trembling. Not because Megan had yelled. Not because she had accused me of resenting the Whitmores. Because of one sentence. "You don't understand what this could do to Grant's family." I walked back to the kitchen and called Rebecca. She answered from her office. "How did it go?" "Worse." I told her everything. When I reached Megan's comment about Grant's family, Rebecca became quiet. Then I told her Megan believed the amendment could damage her marriage. Rebecca asked, "Did she explain how?" "No." "Did she mention a lender?" "No." "An investment?" "No." "Did she ask you to sign anything?" "No." "Good." I looked at the empty chair where Megan had been sitting. "What do we do?" "We don't assume." It sounded like William. "We gather facts." How Rebecca paused. "Start by remembering. Remembering what every conversation you've had with Grant, Charles, Patricia, or Megan, about your house, your investments, your trust, or future inheritance. Even conversations that seemed harmless." I knew immediately where my memory went. A dinner, several months earlier. Charles had spent nearly half an hour talking about a new development project. Grant had asked me a question afterward. Patricia had made a joke. And Charles had raised his wine glass toward Megan and called her something I had laughed about at the time. The future wealthy woman in the family. I had forgotten that dinner. Now I remembered almost every word. My daughter had just told me changing my own estate plan could damage her husband's family. I needed to know why. And I was beginning to suspect the answer had been spoken right in front of me months ago. The dinner I wasn't supposed to remember. Memory is strange. You can forget an entire evening because nothing seemed important when it happened. Then one sentence changes everything, and suddenly you remember the shape of the wine glasses, the smell of rosemary coming from the kitchen, even where everyone was sitting. The dinner had been in March. Patricia called it a small family supper, which in her house meant 12 people, catered food, fresh flowers, and place cards. I had almost declined. Megan had insisted. "Please come, Mom. Patricia keeps saying she hardly sees you." At the time, I thought that was ironic. Now I wondered whether Patricia had wanted me there for another reason. Charles had been in an unusually good mood that evening. Before dinner, he stood near the fireplace talking with Grant and two men I didn't know well. They were discussing zoning approvals, construction costs, and something Charles called the Riverstone opportunity. I wasn't interested. William had understood development better than I ever did. He could listen to people discuss acreage, easements, financing, and infrastructure for an hour without losing interest. I preferred books. So when Charles began describing Whitmore Development Group's proposed mixed-use project, I listened politely and concentrated on my salad. "It's the biggest thing we've attempted in 15 years, he said. Grant nodded enthusiastically. "If the financing structure comes together." Charles gave him a look. "When?" Grant smiled. "When?" Everyone laughed. I did too. At the time it sounded like confidence. Remembering it now, I heard pressure. Charles explained that the project would include retail space, apartments, offices, and a hotel component. He spoke about it as though the buildings already existed. Patricia touched his arm. "Charles has barely slept for 6 months. That's because banks don't appreciate vision," Charles joked. One of the men at the table replied, "Banks appreciate collateral." More laughter. Then Charles said something I had completely forgotten until Megan stood in my kitchen and told me my trust could affect Grant's family. "We have strength in places that don't necessarily show up on a corporate balance sheet." I had assumed he meant private investors. Maybe he did. But I remembered Grant glancing toward Megan. That detail stayed with me. Later, while dessert was being served, Patricia asked whether I still lived in the same house William and I had owned. "Yes. Such a beautiful neighborhood," she said. "We've been there forever. Property values over there have become extraordinary, so I hear." "Didn't you and William buy before that whole area became fashionable, long before?" Charles joined the conversation. "You probably paid what people spend on a kitchen renovation now, something like that. Mortgage-free." The question was so casual I answered without thinking. "For years." Charles whistled. "Smart man, William. I hated debt." Grant smiled. "Your house is in the trust, right?" That was the question. I remembered it clearly now. I had looked at him. "Why?" He immediately raised both hands. "Just curious. Megan mentioned you and William had done good estate planning." Megan had been sitting beside him. She stared down at her dessert. I noticed it. Then I ignored it. "Yes," I said. "The house is part of the plan." Patricia leaned toward me. "William must have left you very secure." I did. I changed the subject, or tried to. But a few minutes later, Charles raised his glass to family security. Then he pointed playfully toward Megan and to the future wealthy woman in the Whitmore family. Megan laughed. Grant laughed. Patricia smiled. I laughed too. I thought Charles was making a tasteless joke about inheritance. Now I wondered whether it had been a joke at all. I called Rebecca before I could talk myself out of it. I remembered the dinner. What dinner? I told her everything. Unlike me, Rebecca did not assign meaning to every sentence. She separated facts from impressions. "Did Charles explicitly say your assets were involved in his project?" "No." "Did Grant number? Did Megan know? Did anyone ask you to guarantee a loan, number, sign anything?" "No." "Provide a financial statement?" "No." "Then we stay careful." I understood. But you hear how it sounds. I hear why you're concerned. What can we actually find out? Some information about Charles's company may be public. Rebecca explained that depending on the property's entities, financing arrangements, and recorded instruments involved, there could be public records showing liens, deeds of trust, ownership entities, or other useful information. Can you look? I can review what is appropriately available. But Aubrey, I want you to promise me something. What? Do not call Charles's lender. I don't even know who his lender is. Good. Keep it that way for now. Why? Because suspicion is not evidence. If your trust has not been legally pledged, and I see no mechanism by which it could have been, without far more happening, then we need to understand what we're dealing with before creating unnecessary consequences. That steadied me. Rebecca was not helping me build a case against my daughter. She was helping me avoid building one out of fear. 2 days later, she called. I found enough to justify another conversation. My stomach tightened. With Megan. With you first. I drove to her office that afternoon. Rebecca had several pages on her desk. Whitmore Development Group is more complicated than one company, she said. There are multiple entities associated with different properties and projects. That's normal in real estate. So nothing suspicious, I didn't say that. She showed me records connected to properties held by Charles's business entities. I understood very little of the technical details. Rebecca translated. Several existing obligations appear substantial. How substantial enough that liquidity and refinancing would matter? That word again. Liquidity. Grant asking about mine. I folded my hands. And Riverstone. There are entities connected to a proposed project matching what you described. I can't tell you the entire financing picture from public records. But there are signs Whitmore Development has been carrying significant obligations while preparing for expansion. Is Charles broke no evidence of that? In trouble, financial pressure and insolvency are not the same thing. I appreciated the precision even though I wanted a simpler answer. So what do we know? We know there are meaningful debt obligations. I waited. And some financing appears to be approaching periods where renewal, restructuring, or replacement could become important. How soon? Soon enough that your recollection of that dinner interests me. I leaned back. The pieces were becoming visible, but they still did not form a complete picture. What would my trust have to do with any of this, legally based on what I know right now? Nothing. Then why did Megan panic? That is the question. Rebecca pulled out my trust summary. What exactly did Megan receive this? She reviewed it again. Successor trustee, beneficiary, no values. She knows the house is paid off. Yes. She probably knows William left investments. Yes. She asked what everything was worth. Yes. Grant asked about liquidity. Yes. Patricia knew Megan would handle the trust. Yes. Charles called her the future wealthy woman. Yes. Rebecca looked at me. Those facts concern me. My mouth went dry. Why? Because taken together they suggest your future estate may have become part of the Whitmore's understanding of Megan's financial position. Financial position. She doesn't own it. I know. You know. Yes. Megan should know. Yes. Grant works in commercial real estate. He definitely should know. Rebecca did not respond. That silence answered more than words. What if they told someone she would inherit? People disclose expected inheritances in various contexts. That alone does not give anyone rights to your property. What if they said she'd control the trust that would depend entirely on exactly what was represented? I felt a flash of anger. I want to call Megan. Don't. Why? Because she has already had several opportunities to explain voluntarily. That stopped me. Rebecca continued. If you confront her with speculation, you may get denial, defensiveness, or a carefully narrowed answer. Let's not accuse anyone until we know what happened. So I do nothing. For now, yes, I hated that. Doing nothing felt like weakness, but perhaps restraint was another form of control. I drove home slowly. At a red light, my phone buzzed. A message from Patricia. Aubrey, I'm sorry things became uncomfortable at dinner. Family misunderstandings happen. I hope we can all put this behind us soon. I read it twice. She had never texted me privately before. I did not respond. 5 minutes later, another message arrived. Megan is under enormous pressure right now. I hope you'll keep that in mind. Pressure. From whom? From what? When I reached home, I parked in the driveway but stayed in the car. I remembered Charles at that March dinner. The confidence, the toast, the joke about Megan becoming wealthy. And something else came back to me. After dessert, while I was putting on my coat, I had heard Charles talking quietly to Grant near the study. I only caught one sentence. At least that side of the family is solid. I had assumed he meant me. A stable retired mother. A paid-off home. No drama. Now I wondered whether solid meant something entirely different. That evening I walked through my house differently. The living room William and I had painted ourselves. The hardwood floors we refinished when Megan was a baby. The kitchen we renovated after 25 years of marriage. To Charles, perhaps it was equity. To Grant, liquidity calculations. To Megan, future inheritance. To me, it was still home. And suddenly I understood what frightened me most. No one had taken anything. No one had forged my signature. No one had emptied an account. But perhaps people had begun mentally moving my possessions from my column into theirs. The Whitmores hadn't been asking about my money because they were curious. They had been measuring it, and I still didn't know what they intended to do with the number. The letter that wasn't for me. Megan came back 4 days later. This time she brought a folder. The moment I saw it tucked beneath her arm, I remembered Rebecca's warning. Do not sign anything Megan brings you. It was a Saturday morning, cool enough that I had opened the kitchen windows while making breakfast. I had planned to spend the day doing ordinary things: laundry, groceries, maybe lunch with an old colleague from the library. Then the doorbell rang. Megan stood on the porch. Can we talk? I looked at the folder. What's that? Nothing dramatic. People usually say that when they are carrying something dramatic. I stepped aside. She entered more slowly than she had the previous time. Coffee, I asked. This time she nodded. Please. I poured 2 cups. For several minutes we talked about the children. It almost felt normal. My grandson had received an excellent grade on a science project. My granddaughter wanted to quit soccer and take piano lessons. I listened. I laughed once. For a few minutes I remembered how easy talking to Megan used to be. Then she placed the folder on the kitchen table. There it was again. The other conversation waiting underneath the ordinary one. Mom, I want to fix this. So do I. Relief crossed her face. Good. But fixing our relationship and changing my trust are 2 different things. The relief disappeared. I know. Do you? She opened the folder. I spoke to someone who thinks there may be a simple way to clear up the confusion. Someone, a financial professional, whose Grant knows him. Of course he did. She pulled out several pages. What is that? It's basically an acknowledgement. Of what? That your estate plan hasn't changed regarding beneficiaries. I looked at her. Why would anyone outside my attorney's office need me to acknowledge that? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Megan pushed the papers toward me. It just confirms that you haven't disinherited me. I did not touch them. Rebecca already confirmed that. This would be in writing. It is in writing. It's called my trust. Megan sighed. Mom, please don't make everything difficult. I felt something inside me harden. My private estate plan became difficult when other people started depending on it. No one is depending on it. Then this paper is unnecessary. It would help. Whom? She didn't answer. I pushed the documents back toward her. I will not sign anything Rebecca hasn't reviewed. Megan's jaw tightened. You call Rebecca about everything now. She is my attorney. You act like I'm trying to trick you. I haven't accused you of that. You don't have to. Then leave the papers. I'll send them to Rebecca. Her hand immediately covered them. No. That told me enough. Why not? Because they're not mine to leave. Whose are they, Mom? You brought documents into my home and asked for my signature. I think I'm entitled to know who prepared them. She began gathering the pages. This was a mistake. I stood. Megan, sit down. No. Why are you so afraid of Rebecca seeing those papers? I'm not afraid. Then leave them. I said no. She shoved the pages into the folder too quickly. Several sheets slipped from the bottom and scattered across the kitchen floor. Megan cursed under her breath and bent down. So did I. I picked up the page closest to my chair. I wish I could tell you I understood it immediately. I didn't. It looked like ordinary business correspondence. There was a company letterhead I didn't recognize, a reference number, several paragraphs of formal language. Then my eyes caught 3 words. Anticipated family-controlled assets. I stopped. Megan reached for the page. Give me that. I pulled it closer. What is this? It's not what you think. I don't know what I think. Mom. I kept reading. The correspondence referred to supplemental financial information connected to a proposed financing arrangement. Then another phrase appeared. Future fiduciary role, and Megan's name. I looked up. The color had drained from her face. What does this mean? Nothing. Then why are you trying to take it because it isn't addressed to you? Apparently my assets are. They're not. I stood with the page in my hand. Megan, what are anticipated family-controlled assets? It's general language. What family? She reached for the page again. I stepped back. Aubrey. She almost never called me Aubrey. Answer me. It refers to expectations. That's all. What expectations? She said nothing. I looked back at the correspondence. The language was careful. It did not say Megan owned my trust. It did not say my home had been pledged. It did not say anyone had a current legal right to my investments. But it clearly referenced Megan's future financial position. And somehow her future fiduciary role mattered enough to appear in correspondence with a private lender. My hands began trembling. Did you give these people information about my trust? No one has access to your trust. That isn't what I asked. No one has taken anything from you. Again, that defense, always answering the accusation I hadn't made. Did you tell them you were my successor trustee? Megan looked away. Yes. The word was barely audible. Did you tell them you were a beneficiary? Yes. Did you tell them what my trust is worth? Not exactly. My stomach turned. What does not exactly mean? I gave an estimate. I stared at her. You gave strangers an estimate of my estate? It was confidential. I almost laughed. Confidential? From whom? Me. Grant said it was normal. There it was. Grant. What did Grant say was normal? Disclosing anticipated inheritance in certain financial contexts. You are not inheriting anything today. I know that. Do you? Her face tightened. Don't talk to me like I'm stupid. Then stop explaining my own property to other people as though I'm already dead. She flinched. For 1 second I regretted saying it. Then I looked again at the paper. How much what? What estimate did you give? I don't remember. You asked me months ago what everything was worth. I asked generally. Because of this silence, that was my answer. I sat down. My legs suddenly felt weak. Megan reached toward me. Mom, don't. She stopped. I looked at the scattered papers still on the floor. Pick those up. She did. I kept the lender correspondence. She noticed. I need that. Rebecca needs it more. You can't keep someone else's private document. It references my financial assets. Not specifically. Then you won't mind Rebecca reading it. Megan stood. This could create serious problems. For whom? She closed her eyes. You don't understand how financing works. No. But Rebecca understands how trusts work. Please give it back. No. Her eyes filled with tears. Mom, no one stole from you. I know. No one forged your signature. I know. No one pledged your house. That caught my attention. How do you know I was worried about my house being pledged? Megan froze. I felt cold. Was my house discussed only as part of the estimated estate? I closed my eyes. The home where William and I had raised her. Reduced to a line inside an estimated future inheritance. Megan, leave. Please, leave. She gathered the folder. At the kitchen doorway, she turned. Grant is going to be furious. I looked at her. With me, with everyone. That sounds like Grant's problem. She left. I locked the door behind her. Then I called Rebecca. I have something. What? A letter from a private lender. There was a pause. How did you get it? I explained. Can you photograph it? Yes. Send it securely to the address I'm about to text you. I did. 20 minutes later, Rebecca called back. Her voice was different, more formal, more careful. Aubrey, I need you to listen closely. All right. This document does not appear to pledge your trust assets. I exhaled. It does not establish any current ownership interest for Megan. Good. And based solely on what I'm reading, I do not see a claim that Megan currently controls your trust. Then what is it? It appears her expected future financial position has been included as part of a broader financial narrative. What does that mean in English? Rebecca paused. It means someone wanted Megan to look wealthier or potentially more financially powerful in the future than her present assets alone would suggest. I felt sick. Is that illegal? I am not making that determination from one document. But it is misleading. That depends on the exact disclosures, representations, and context. I stared at William's old coffee mug sitting on the shelf across the kitchen. Rebecca. They didn't take my money. No. They didn't mortgage my house. Not from anything we know. They didn't access the trust. Correct. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt violated in a way I had no word for. Someone had taken the future possibility of my death and turned it into present financial confidence. My daughter had helped them do it. I looked down at the phrase again. Anticipated family-controlled assets. Not mine. Family-controlled. As though ownership were already drifting away from me. Rebecca spoke gently. Aubrey, yes. Do not contact the lender. I won't. And do not sign anything. I won't. We need Megan to explain exactly what she represented. I thought about my daughter standing in my kitchen insisting no one had stolen anything. She had been telling the truth, technically. And somehow that made it worse. Because this wasn't a theft committed in secret. It was an assumption made openly among people who had convinced themselves my future belonged inside their plans. They hadn't taken my money. They had done something almost as dangerous. They had started making promises around it. What Megan had promised. Megan did not answer my calls for 2 days. That was unusual. Even during our worst disagreements, she had never been good at silence. Megan needed resolution, preferably the kind that arrived quickly and allowed everyone to move on without examining too closely what had caused the problem. This time, silence probably felt safer. I did not chase her. On Monday morning, Rebecca called and asked me to come to her office. The lender correspondence was spread across her conference table when I arrived. Beside it were copies of my trust summary and several pages Rebecca had prepared herself. I want to be precise, she said. So do I. This document does not show that your trust was pledged. I understand. It does not show that you transferred your property. I understand that too. And I see nothing establishing that Grant Charles or anyone else obtained legal authority over your assets. I looked at her. You keep emphasizing what they didn't do, because it matters. Then tell me what they did. Rebecca tapped the lender letter. Someone represented Megan's expected future financial position strongly enough that her anticipated inheritance and fiduciary role became relevant to a financing discussion. My stomach tightened. How strongly we need Megan to answer that. As if summoned by the sentence, my phone vibrated. Megan. I looked at Rebecca. Answer it. I did. Hello, Mom? Her voice sounded exhausted. Where are you with Rebecca? Silence. Then, of course you are. You left lender correspondence on my kitchen floor. I didn't leave it. You kept it, because it referenced my assets. Megan sighed. Can we talk? Yes. Alone. I looked at Rebecca. No. Mom. If this involves my trust, Rebecca is part of the conversation. Another long silence. Finally, Megan said, I'll come there. She arrived 40 minutes later. When Rebecca's assistant brought her into the conference room, Megan looked as though she had barely slept. She sat across from me but refused to look at the papers. Rebecca spoke first. Megan, your mother has not asked me to threaten anyone, contact any lender, or initiate legal action. Megan finally looked up. You haven't contacted them, no. Relief passed across her face. Rebecca noticed it too. What we need, she continued, is an accurate understanding of what was represented. Megan looked at me. You're really doing this. I didn't create this situation. No one did anything to you. Then explaining it should be easy. Her mouth tightened. Rebecca slid the letter toward her. Let's begin with anticipated family-controlled assets. What does that refer to? Megan stared at the phrase. It was badly worded. What did it refer to? My expected inheritance. How much did you disclose? I don't remember the exact number. I spoke for the first time. Try. Megan looked at me. Approximately $3.5 million. I felt as though the room tilted. She had been closer than I wanted her to be. How did you get that number, Mom, please? How Grant estimated the house. I knew roughly what Dad had left. You knew you've talked about investments before, not values, not exact values. Rebecca intervened. Did you represent that 3.5 million as a current asset? Num. Was it included in your personal net worth? Not exactly. There was that phrase again. Not exactly. Rebecca leaned forward. What does that mean? There was a section for anticipated assets and contingent financial interests. And you listed your mother's estate, my expected inheritance. I felt anger rise. I am sitting 3 feet from you, Megan. I know. Then stop calling my property your expected inheritance like it's an account waiting to mature. Her eyes filled with tears. I know how it sounds. No, I don't think you did. Rebecca kept her voice calm. What about your successor trustee status? Megan rubbed her palms together. Grant thought it demonstrated continuity. Continuity of what family financial management? Rebecca's expression hardened slightly. Successor trustee status does not establish future ownership. I know that now. Did you know it then? Megan hesitated. I knew being trustee wasn't the same as owning everything. Then why include it? Because Grant said it strengthened the overall presentation. There it was. Not an accident. A presentation. I stared at my daughter. Presentation for what? Megan looked at the table. Whitmore Development needed refinancing. I said nothing. Rebecca asked, for the Riverstone project. Yes. Megan began talking faster as if speed might make the story easier to survive. Charles's company had taken on substantial obligations while preparing for Riverstone. Construction costs had increased. One expected investor had reduced his commitment. Another financing arrangement became less favorable. Charles needed to refinance existing debt while preserving enough capital to move forward. Grant had been helping. He wasn't doing anything criminal, Megan said quickly. No one said he was, Rebecca replied. They were trying to show that the family had financial stability beyond the company. What family? I asked. Megan closed her eyes. The Whitmores. And you. Yes. And somehow me. No. I pointed to the lender letter. I'm right there without my name. You weren't guaranteeing anything. Then why did my money matter? Because I was expected to inherit it eventually. There was the sentence. Clean, simple, terrible. I leaned back. When did my death become part of Charles's refinancing strategy? Megan recoiled. Don't say it like that. How would you like me to say it? It wasn't about you dying. An inheritance generally requires that I do. You could change the trust. I did. She flinched, and suddenly I understood the panic. That's why you were so afraid. Megan didn't answer. When I replaced you as successor trustee, the story changed. It complicated things. What story? Rebecca answered carefully. The financial narrative. Megan nodded. I looked between them. So they weren't counting on taking my money today. No, Rebecca said. They were counting on the idea that Megan would eventually inherit substantial assets and potentially administer the trust. That's closer. I turned to Megan. Who wrote the disclosure? Grant helped. Did Charles see it? Yes. Did he know where the anticipated assets came from? Yes. Patricia. I don't know how much she knew. I almost laughed. Patricia had asked whether Megan would eventually handle my house and trust. She knew enough. What did the lender believe? Megan looked at Rebecca instead of me. We never said I owned Mom's assets. That is not the question, Rebecca said. Megan swallowed. The wording was broad. How broad? We described me as an eventual beneficiary of a multimillion-dollar family trust, and as the named successor trustee. And did you explain that your mother could replace you? Silence. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. Megan. No. Did you explain that I could change beneficiaries? Another silence. No. Did you explain that being successor trustee would not give you personal ownership of trust assets? We didn't go into that level of detail. Rebecca's voice became firmer. Did you understand that leaving those distinctions unexplained could create a stronger impression of future control than the trust actually guaranteed? Megan's eyes moved toward the window. She didn't answer. Rebecca repeated the question. Megan. I don't know. I knew that voice. She had used it at 16 when she knew exactly what she had done, but wanted uncertainty to soften responsibility. Megan, look at me. She did. Did you know? Her eyes filled. Mom. Did you know the wording made your future position sound more certain than it was? Grant pressured her, I told myself. Charles pressured Grant. Megan wanted acceptance. There had to be an explanation that would let me recognize my daughter again. She whispered yes. The room became completely quiet. I heard the faint hum of the air conditioning. Rebecca did not speak. Neither did I. Megan wiped her cheek. I knew it was vague. How vague enough? Why? Because Grant said no one was relying on your assets directly. That doesn't answer me. Because we needed the financial picture to look strong. We. Not Grant. Not Charles. We. That single word changed something. Until then, a part of me had wanted Megan to be a passenger in someone else's bad decision. Instead, she had helped drive it. No one thought you were going to die tomorrow, she said. That is supposed to make me feel better, no. You used my future estate to make your husband's family look financially stronger. It wasn't just for them. Then who for us? She pressed both hands against the table. If Riverstone succeeded, Grant's position in the company would improve. Charles had talked about giving him a larger role. It could change our children's future. So you decided my future could help finance theirs. I didn't give anyone your money. You keep saying that because it's the only part you can defend. She started crying harder. I thought it was harmless. Then why did you panic when I changed the trustee? Because Grant had already told them I would be managing everything someday. There it was. Not merely inheriting. Managing. Did you tell Grant that yes? Did you correct him when he treated it like guaranteed authority? Megan looked down. No. I felt something break quietly inside me. Not love. Love is harder to destroy than people think. It was confidence. The assumption that when forced to choose between honesty and approval, my daughter would choose honesty. Rebecca gathered the documents. I think we should stop for today. But I had one more question. Megan. She looked at me. If I hadn't changed the trustee, would you ever have told me? Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. That was answer enough. I stood. Megan reached for my hand. I moved it away. Not dramatically. Just enough. The pain on her face almost undid me. Almost. I love you, I said. She began crying again. But I need you to understand something. Your father and I spent decades building security, so neither of us would ever have to ask permission to live our own lives. That security was never created to make another family look richer on paper. I know. No. You know now. I picked up my purse. At the door, I turned back. Megan sat alone at the conference table, surrounded by papers describing money she might receive someday. For the first time, I understood why changing one name had frightened her so badly. The worst part wasn't that Megan had been pressured. The worst part was that somewhere along the way, she had agreed that my future death belonged in someone else's financial plan. You were never supposed to change it. Megan followed me into the parking lot. Mom. I kept walking. Mom, please. I reached my car before she caught up with me. Rebecca's office was behind us, and people were moving in and out of the building, carrying briefcases, coffee cups, ordinary pieces of their ordinary lives. I wanted desperately to be one of them. Instead, I stood beside my car while my daughter cried over an estate I had not yet died to leave her. I said I was sorry, Megan told me. No. You explained what happened. What else do you want I don't know yet? That was the truth. I unlocked my car. Megan put her hand on the door. Can we please go somewhere and talk? We just talked. Not with Rebecca sitting there like I'm being interrogated. She asked questions about documents involving my trust. I know. Then why shouldn't she have been there? Because you're my mother. And that is exactly why she needed to be. Megan stared at me. I saw anger beginning to replace embarrassment. It was easier for her to be angry. Probably easier for both of us. You're enjoying this, she said. I actually stepped backward. What you finally have something you can hold over me. I looked at her for several seconds. Then I opened the car door. Go home, Megan. No. You wanted the truth. I gave it to you. After I found the lender letter. I still told you. Because you ran out of places to hide it. That isn't fair. Neither was estimating my estate for your father-in-law's financing. Her face tightened. You keep making it sound like we tried to take your house. I have repeatedly acknowledged that you didn't. Then why are you acting like this? Because the fact that you didn't commit the worst possible version of something doesn't make what you did acceptable. Megan folded her arms. So what now? I go home? I mean with the trust. The trust stays exactly as Rebecca amended it. Her expression changed instantly. Mom. No. You heard everything. You know there was no plan to steal from you. That was never the standard. But now you know why the trustee designation mattered. Yes. Then you can fix it. I stared at her. Fix what? Put me back. The words came so naturally that for a moment I wondered whether she had heard anything I had said. Megan, everything I learned today confirms that removing you was the correct decision. No, it doesn't. You allowed your future fiduciary role to be used in a financial presentation for your husband's family because I thought I was going to be the trustee. You were, exactly. Until I changed it. That's the problem. Her voice echoed across the parking area. A woman getting into a nearby car glanced toward us. Megan lowered her voice. You changed something everyone had already planned around. Everyone. The words sat between us. I spoke slowly. Everyone except me. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. She looked away. I closed the car door again without getting inside. All right. Tell me what happens if I don't change it back. Megan rubbed her forehead. The refinancing gets harder. For Charles. For all of us. No, for Charles. Grant's involved. That was Grant's decision. His career is tied to this. Also his decision. You make everything sound so simple. Because one part is simple. My trust was never available to solve this. No one asked for your trust. You asked for the appearance of it. She flinched. I continued. You used the expectation of my assets to make your financial position look stronger. It was a disclosure. It was deliberately vague. I admitted that. And now you want me to restore the exact trustee designation that made the vagueness useful. It isn't like that. Then explain how it is different. She couldn't. I watched my daughter struggle for an answer, and I felt something I had not expected. Not satisfaction, grief. I remembered teaching Megan to ride a bicycle in our driveway. She had been 8. William stood at one end while I stood at the other. Megan kept demanding that one of us hold the seat. At some point, William whispered, "Let go." I told him she wasn't ready. She'll never know she's ready if you never let go. I had released the bicycle. Megan rode 6 feet before falling into the grass. She cried. I ran toward her. William stopped me. Wait. Megan stood by herself. She got back on. All these years later, I wondered how many times after William died I had forgotten that lesson. How often had Megan fallen and found me already running? I helped you too much, I said. She frowned. What? The wedding, the down payment, the loan, childcare, emergencies. Every time something became difficult, I tried to make it easier. Are you seriously listing everything you've done for me now? No. It sounds like it. I'm listing what I did wrong. That silenced her. I thought helping you was always loving you. Mom. But maybe sometimes I was just making sure you never had to hear no. Her eyes hardened. This isn't about parenting. This is about you being angry that I have another family. No. Yes, it is. Ever since Dad died, you've expected me to fill that space. The words hurt because there was a piece of truth inside them. I did depend on you after your father died. You depended on me for everything. For a while. And then I got married. Yes. And suddenly I wasn't available whenever you wanted. I nodded. You're right. She stopped. That was not the answer she expected. You're right that I had to learn to live without depending on you emotionally. And I did. Then why did the dinner matter so much? Because independence is not the same as accepting humiliation. Megan looked down. You said the Whitmores were your real family, as if I had become something less. I told you I was angry, and I told you that isn't why I changed the trust. Of course it is. No, your sentence opened my eyes. Your behavior afterward kept them open. She looked at me. If Patricia had never mentioned my trust that night, maybe I would have gone home and cried. Maybe I would have avoided you for a week. Eventually we would have talked. I stepped closer. But Patricia knew. Grant knew. Charles knew. A private lender knew. Everyone knew about a future role in my estate that somehow became useful to them. Megan wiped her face. You don't understand how much pressure I was under. Then tell me. Grant promised his father he could help. That was Grant's promise. Charles was counting on him. That was Charles's choice. And I was trying to support my husband, with my future estate, with something I genuinely expected. There it was again. Expected. I asked quietly. Expected from whom, you and Dad? Did we ever promise you $3.5 million? No. Did we promise never to change the trust? No. Did we promise you would always be trustee? She hesitated. No. Then what exactly were you entitled to promise? Her frustration exploded. You were never supposed to change it. Neither of us moved. Megan heard the words at the same moment I did. She covered her mouth. But they could not be pulled back. I felt strangely calm. Say that again. I didn't mean, yes you did. Mom, you were never supposed to change it. I meant there was no reason to. There was no reason because you believed the decision was already yours. No. You thought my estate plan was fixed because changing it would inconvenience plans I never approved. That isn't fair. You thought being named beneficiary meant the inheritance was already waiting for you. I never said that. You didn't have to. She began crying. You have more than enough money. I stared at her. What? You do. You have the house, your investments, Social Security. Dad planned everything. You're comfortable, and eventually it comes to me anyway. There was no anger in her voice now. That made it worse. She sounded reasonable, as though explaining arithmetic. I asked the question quietly. After what? She went still. Megan, you said eventually it comes to you. After what? Her face crumpled. Mom, don't. After I die. I didn't mean it that way. But that is the event your financial plan requires. She turned away. For several moments neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, Are you going to disinherit me? I looked at her. There was genuine fear in her face. And despite everything, my heart still recognized my child. No. She turned back. What, I'm not disinheriting you. Confusion replaced fear. Then what are you doing? Exactly what I already did. The professional trustee stays. Yes. Forever. As long as I believe it is the right arrangement. But if you forgive me, I took a breath. This is what you still don't understand. Forgiveness and financial authority are not the same thing. She stared at me. You can remain my daughter. You can remain a beneficiary. We may even repair what happened between us. I paused. But you will not manage the trust. Her tears came again. This time I did not rush to stop them. I love you, Megan. Doesn't feel like it. I know. She looked almost like that 8-year-old girl beside the fallen bicycle. Every instinct in me wanted to lift her. But William's lesson returned. Wait. Let her stand. The sentence about your real family hurt me, I said. Deeply. But that sentence did not cost you the trustee role. Then what did you stop seeing the difference between your mother and your future estate? She closed her eyes. I opened my car door. This time she did not stop me. I sat behind the wheel and looked at her one last time. I'm not taking away what I might someday leave my daughter. Megan stood silently beside the car. I'm taking away her ability to treat it as hers before I'm gone. Then I closed the door. For the first time since this began, I drove home without wondering whether I had made the wrong decision. The meeting with her real family. Charles Whitmore called me the following afternoon. Not Megan, not Grant. Charles. I was sitting at my kitchen table sorting mail when his name appeared on my phone. For several seconds I considered letting it ring. Then I answered. Aubrey, we need to talk. No hello, no how are you. Apparently courtesy had become another luxury the Whitmores could no longer afford. About what Charles I think you know. My trust. He hesitated. The situation. I almost smiled. Everyone had developed a remarkable vocabulary for avoiding the obvious. Situation. Misunderstanding. Financial picture. Family issue. Anything except my money. If you want to discuss my estate plan, my attorney will be present. Aubrey lawyers are exactly how simple misunderstandings become complicated. No. Lawyers are how complicated things stop pretending to be simple. Silence. Then he exhaled. Fine. We met 2 days later in Rebecca's conference room. I arrived first. Rebecca had water waiting and a yellow legal pad in front of her. You can end this meeting whenever you want, she reminded me. I know. You don't owe anyone a negotiation. I know. Then why agree? I looked at the empty chairs. Because I want to hear them say it. Rebecca understood. At 10 precisely, Megan entered with Grant. Charles and Patricia followed. For a moment the six of us stood there, exchanging the kind of polite greetings people use when everyone knows politeness is the only thing keeping the room civilized. Patricia looked immaculate. Of course she did. Cream jacket, pearl earrings, perfect hair. Charles looked older than he had at the anniversary dinner. Grant looked angry before anyone had spoken. Megan would not meet my eyes. We sat. Rebecca began. This meeting is at Aubrey's request and for informational purposes only. She has not agreed to modify her estate plan, provide financial assistance guarantee obligations, or make representations to any lender or investor. Grant leaned back. That sounds welcoming. Rebecca ignored him. Charles cleared his throat. Aubrey, first I want to say I'm sorry this has gotten out of hand. Which part? He looked briefly toward Megan. The confusion about Megan's financial disclosure. There wasn't confusion. Aubrey. She knew the wording was vague. Megan looked down. Charles shifted. No one intended to misrepresent your assets. Then why were my assets relevant? They weren't directly. Indirectly then. Grant leaned forward. This is exactly the problem. You keep framing everything in the most sinister way possible. Rebecca spoke before I could. Grant Aubrey is entitled to ask why her anticipated estate appeared in a financial presentation connected to your family. It wasn't her estate. It was Megan's contingent inheritance. I looked at him. Where does Megan's contingent inheritance come from? He said nothing. From my estate. It was a disclosure of expected future assets. Expected by whom Grant's jaw tightened. Charles raised one hand. Let's not turn this into a fight. I almost admired the irony. Charles opened a leather folder. We have a practical problem. Finally. Truth. What problem? The refinancing package was structured around several elements of family financial strength. Rebecca asked, was Aubrey Martin a guarantor? No. Did she pledge collateral? No. Did she sign a commitment? No. Then legally her assets were not part of your family financial strength. Charles looked irritated. I understand the legal distinction. Good. But lenders look at broader circumstances. I folded my hands. And you encouraged them to look at mine. No one lied. Megan already admitted the language was intentionally vague. Patricia finally spoke. Aubrey, surely you can understand why Megan wanted to help her husband. I turned toward her. I understand wanting to help. Then perhaps you can understand how painful this has become. For whom? For everyone. That word again. Everyone. Except the woman whose estate they had discussed. Charles slid a document toward Rebecca. We are asking for a temporary solution. Rebecca did not touch it. What solution? Charles looked at me. If Megan were restored as successor trustee, the original disclosure would remain substantially consistent. For a moment I thought I had misunderstood him. You want me to put Megan back, temporarily. How temporarily? Until the refinancing closes. There it was. The sentence that removed the last possibility that I had exaggerated any of this. I looked at Megan. She still would not meet my eyes. You knew he was going to ask me this? Yes. And you thought it was reasonable. I thought you could at least listen. I turned back to Charles. What happens after the refinancing? You can make whatever estate changes you want. I almost laughed. So you don't actually care who administers my trust after I die? Charles frowned. That isn't what I said. You care what the paperwork looks like until your financing closes. Grant interrupted. No one is asking you for a dime, and yet you need my signature. We need continuity. You need appearance. His face reddened. Patricia reached toward him. Grant. But he kept going. Do you understand how much money is at stake, number millions? I looked directly at him. And how much of those millions belongs to me? That isn't the point. It is the only point I need. Charles rubbed his temple. Aubrey, if this refinancing fails, we may have to liquidate property under unfavorable conditions. Riverstone could be delayed indefinitely. There are employees involved, contractors, families. The appeal was clever. This was no longer about wealthy developers. Now I was supposed to imagine workers losing jobs because I refused to put my daughter's name back into my own trust. Rebecca spoke calmly. Charles, if your financing depends materially on the identity of a revocable trust successor fiduciary when the current trustee is alive and competent, that is a risk your company chose. Grant stared at her. You lawyers can make anything sound irresponsible. Rebecca smiled slightly. Only irresponsible things, Megan whispered. Please. I turned toward her. What, Mom, just consider it. I studied my daughter. Why for me? That hurt, because for most of her life those two words would have been enough. For me. I would have moved schedules, written checks, canceled plans, driven through storms. But this time I asked another question. And what exactly would I be doing for you? She couldn't answer. Patricia did. You would be helping family. The room became very still. I looked at her. Family. Yes. Whose Patricia blinked. Aubrey, please. No, I'm asking sincerely. I looked around the table. Megan told me at your anniversary dinner that the Whitmores were her real family now. Megan covered her eyes briefly. Patricia shifted in her chair. People say unfortunate things when emotional. I agree. This doesn't need to become about that. It isn't. I leaned forward. But now you're sitting in my attorney's office asking me to alter my estate plan to protect financing for the family my daughter told me had replaced me. No one spoke. So when you say family should help family, Patricia, which family? Silence. Not uncomfortable silence. Revealing silence. Rebecca finally broke it. Let's make the legal situation clear. She opened my trust documents. Aubrey is the current trustee. Megan's former designation as successor trustee gave her no present ownership interest. Charles nodded impatiently. We know. Rebecca continued. Megan's beneficiary status does not give her present ownership of Aubrey's assets either. We understand. Then you also understand that anticipated inheritance is inherently uncertain. Grant spoke. Technically. Rebecca looked at him. Not technically, legally and practically. She continued. Aubrey may live another 30 years. Asset values may change. Expenses may arise. Beneficiary provisions may be amended where permitted. The trust may evolve. No outside party should treat an anticipated inheritance as guaranteed current wealth. Charles looked down. For the first time, he seemed embarrassed. How bad is the refinancing problem? I asked. He sighed. Bad enough. Will the company fail? Not necessarily. Will you lose Riverstone? Possibly. Then you restructure at a cost. Sell assets. Another pause. Yes, there it was. Options. Painful options. But options. They did not need my trust to survive. They needed my trust to avoid consequences. Grant suddenly pushed back from the table. This is ridiculous. We're talking about one designation on paper, and you're willing to cost everyone millions because your feelings got hurt. Megan whispered. Grant, stop. No, someone needs to say it. I looked at him. You believe I'm costing you millions, yes. Then why did you build a multi-million-dollar plan around a document I could legally change? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Charles closed his eyes. Patricia looked furious, and Megan looked ashamed. I turned toward her. Did you tell them I would never change it? She didn't answer. Megan, tears appeared. I told them you trusted me. That isn't what I asked. She swallowed. I said I could handle it. Handle what? You. I stared at her. She whispered, I told them I could handle my mother. Something inside me went quiet. Not broken, quiet, because there was nothing left to misunderstand. My daughter had not merely described my estate. She had described me as the obstacle she believed she could manage. I stood. Rebecca immediately closed the trust folder. The meeting was over. Charles started to speak. I raised my hand. No. He stopped. I am not restoring Megan as successor trustee. I am not signing anything for your lender. I am not guaranteeing your project, and I am not discussing my assets with your family again. Patricia's expression hardened. You may regret destroying your relationship with your daughter over money. I looked at Megan. No, Patricia. Money didn't do this. Then I looked around the table. Assumptions did. I picked up my purse. For months, the Whitmores had called themselves Megan's real family. Now they were sitting across from me, asking me to pay the price of belonging to them. I finally understood that I didn't need a seat at their table badly enough to buy one. William had warned me. I did not cry until I got home. Not in Rebecca's office. Not in the elevator. Not while walking across the parking lot. Not even when I sat behind the wheel and realized my hands were shaking too badly to put the key into the ignition. I waited. Then I drove home, locked the front door behind me, placed my purse on the entry table, and saw William's photograph on the bookshelf. That was when I broke. I could handle my mother. Those words followed me through every room. Megan had not said she could explain things to me. She had not said she could ask me. She had said she could handle me. As if I were an obstacle, a difficult permit, a reluctant investor, something standing between the Whitmores and the future they had already planned. I sat on the living room floor beside the sofa and cried harder than I had cried since William's funeral, not because of the money. I wish people understood that. If Megan had come to me honestly and said, Mom, Grant's family is in trouble, is there anything you would be willing to do? I might still have said no, but I would have listened. I might even have helped in some limited way if Rebecca believed it was wise. The betrayal was not that Megan wanted something. It was that she had decided my consent was a detail she could manage later. Eventually, the tears stopped. Grief does that. It doesn't disappear. Your body simply becomes too tired to continue expressing it. I made tea and carried it upstairs to William's office. The estate box was still beside his desk. I opened it again. This time I went through everything. Old account statements, insurance documents, property records, letters from Rebecca, William's handwritten notes. I searched because I wanted an answer he could no longer give me. Had he known? Had he seen something in Megan years earlier? And if he had, why hadn't he told me? My phone rang around 5. Rebecca, I wanted to make sure you got home. I did. How are you? I don't know yet. That's fair. I looked at the papers spread across William's desk. Rebecca, did William ever talk to you about Megan? There was a pause. Yes. My chest tightened. What did he say? Nothing accusing her of dishonesty. That isn't what I asked. I know. Then tell me. Another pause. There is something I think you should read. I sat straighter. What a letter. My fingers tightened around the phone. From William, yes. Where is it in my files? Why? Because he asked me to keep it. I stood so quickly my chair rolled backward. For 6 years. Yes. Why didn't you give it to me? Because he gave specific instructions about when I should. My first reaction was anger. Rebecca, I'm his wife. I know. You had a letter from my husband. Yes. And you never told me. He did not want it delivered simply because he died. I closed my eyes. That sounded exactly like William. What were the instructions? Rebecca answered carefully. If you ever experienced significant family pressure involving the trust, particularly pressure connected to Megan's role, I was to use my judgment about whether the letter had become relevant. My knees felt weak. And now I believe it has. I drove back to Rebecca's office the following morning. She met me in the conference room alone. No assistant, no yellow legal pad. Just Rebecca and a cream-colored envelope. My name was written across the front. Aubrey. William's handwriting. I touched it but did not immediately pick it up. When did he write this? About 8 months before he died. Was he afraid Megan would steal from me? No. The answer was immediate. Then what was he afraid of? Read it. I opened the envelope. The first line almost destroyed me. My Aubrey. If Rebecca is giving you this, then something happened that I hoped never would. I stopped. Rebecca quietly stood. I'll give you privacy. I nodded. The door closed. I continued. William wrote that he loved Megan more than he could explain. He wrote about holding her the day she was born, teaching her to drive, walking her onto the field for a father-daughter event when she was 11. He wrote that if love alone determined who should manage money, he would put Megan's name everywhere. Then the letter changed. There is something about our girl you have always seen as kindness, he wrote. Most of the time it is. But kindness and fear can wear the same clothes. I read that sentence twice. William described something I had never fully noticed. Megan hated disappointing people. As a child, she changed opinions depending on which group of friends she was with. As a teenager, she once loaned money she did not have because she was afraid a friend would stop liking her. In college, she stayed in a damaging relationship months longer than she should have because she could not tolerate being called selfish. William did not call her weak. He called her approval-hungry. When Megan loves someone, she wants peace so badly that she sometimes pays for it with boundaries that should not be for sale. My eyes filled. Then came the part that explained everything. If she marries someone whose family is strong, demanding, or financially ambitious, watch carefully. She may confuse keeping them happy with being loyal to them. I covered my mouth. William had written those words before Megan ever met Grant. Not because he predicted the Whitmores, because he knew his daughter. I continued. Do not punish her for this weakness, but do not build your security around the hope that she will suddenly stop having it when pressure is highest. Then, if you ever believe outside influence is affecting her judgment, use an independent trustee. The words blurred. I wiped my eyes. William explained that a professional fiduciary could protect more than money. It could protect Megan from having to choose between her responsibilities and someone she loved. It could protect me from resenting her. It could protect our grandchildren from conflicts created by adults. Then I reached the final paragraphs. Aubrey, if this day comes, you will want to blame yourself. I laughed through my tears because even dead, the man knew me. Don't. You will also want to rescue Megan from whatever consequences brought you to this letter. Think before you do. Helping someone escape every consequence is not always mercy. Sometimes consequences are the only teacher left after advice has failed. I put the letter down. For several minutes I could not continue. Eventually I read the final lines. Whatever happens, remember that Megan is our daughter before she is our beneficiary. Protect yourself, protect what we built, and if you can protect her from becoming the worst decision she ever made. Love, William. I pressed the letter against my chest. Rebecca returned 20 minutes later. She did not ask whether I was all right. She knew I wasn't. He knew I whispered. He worried. Why didn't he tell me? I think he did. I looked up, in his way. I remembered the note. Never confuse the person we love most with the person best qualified to protect what we built. He suggested a professional trustee. Rebecca nodded. I said Megan could handle it. I remember. Did he argue with me? No. That hurt too. William had trusted me to see what he saw when the time came. It had taken me 6 years, but I had seen it. I folded the letter carefully. Does Megan know this exists? No. Does Grant number anyone? Only you and me. I imagined reading it to Megan. I could picture her face when she heard that her father had anticipated her weakness. Part of me wanted to do it. Not out of cruelty, out of desperation. See, your father understood. Your father agrees with me. Your father knew this could happen. It would have been powerful and completely unfair. William was not there to explain himself. Megan could not ask him questions. She could not defend herself. And I refuse to turn my dead husband into a weapon in an argument with our living daughter. I'm not showing her. Rebecca studied me. You don't have to decide today. I already decided. Why? Because William didn't write this to win an argument. Rebecca's expression softened. No, he wrote it to protect us. I placed the letter inside my purse. On the drive home, something inside me finally settled. Until then, I had thought changing the trustee was about protecting my assets from Megan's judgment. William helped me see something larger. The independent trustee protected Megan too. If she never controlled the trust, Grant could never pressure her to use that control. Charles could never build another project around it. Patricia could never invoke family loyalty to influence distributions. And Megan would never again have to choose between protecting my intentions and proving herself to someone else. William had not been asking me to punish our daughter. Even from the grave, he was asking me to love her carefully. That night, I put his letter back into the estate box. Not hidden, protected. Then I turned off the lamp in his office. For the first time since all of this began, I did not feel angry at Megan. I felt sad for her. She had spent so much energy trying to become indispensable to the Whitmores that she had nearly sacrificed the one relationship where she had never needed to earn her place. But understanding her did not mean rescuing her. Compassion did not require surrender, and love did not require giving the trustee role back. William had seen the danger years before I did, but even from the grave he wasn't asking me to punish our daughter. He was reminding me that sometimes the most loving boundary is the one you refuse to remove. The cost of counting my money. Too soon. The Whitmores did not lose everything. I want to make that clear because life rarely delivers consequences as neatly as stories sometimes pretend it does. Charles did not wake up the next morning bankrupt. Grant did not lose his job overnight. No federal agents appeared at anyone's door. There was no dramatic collapse. What happened was quieter, and perhaps more appropriate. The Whitmores were forced to deal with a financial reality they had hoped my future estate would make easier. About 3 weeks after our meeting, Rebecca called me. The financing presentation has been corrected. I was standing in the backyard watering William's roses. What does that mean? The references connected to Megan's anticipated fiduciary position have been clarified. From what I understand, her expected inheritance is no longer being presented in the same way. I turned off the hose. Did you contact the lender? No. Then who did I believe? Charles's advisors insisted the information be corrected once the change in trustee became impossible to ignore. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt tired. What happens now? To Charles, yes. That's his business. Rebecca was right. For weeks I had spent too much time thinking about Whitmore Development Group. It was time to remember that their company had existed before me and would continue in one form or another without me. Still, information found its way back, some through Megan, some through Rebecca when it directly affected me, some through the strange grapevine that exists whenever families and business become tangled together. The favorable refinancing Charles had expected did not close under the original terms. Without the broader picture of family financial strength they had presented, the lender became more conservative. Charles had options. They simply were not the options he wanted. Whitmore Development sold a valuable parcel it had been holding for future development. Riverstone was scaled back. Several planned phases were delayed. Existing debt was restructured under less favorable conditions. No one lost their home. No employees were thrown onto the street because of me. Charles simply had to sacrifice part of the expansion he had wanted in order to protect what he already owned. In other words, he had to live within reality. Patricia did not see it that way. She called me once. I almost did not answer. Then curiosity won. Aubrey, she said, I hope you're satisfied. I sat down at my kitchen table. With what? You know exactly what. If you're calling about Charles's company, I can't help you. You could have. There it was. Not you caused this. You could have prevented it. That distinction mattered. Patricia, I never agreed to participate in Charles's financing. You didn't have to participate. You only had to leave things alone. I closed my eyes. That sentence sounded painfully familiar. You were never supposed to change it. The Whitmores had built expectations around my inaction. My cooperation was never supposed to require consent. It was supposed to consist of remaining predictable. I am sorry Charles is facing difficulties, I said. No, you're not. I don't want your family harmed. You already harmed it. No. I changed my successor trustee, and that change had consequences. Yes, but you don't care. I care about many things, Patricia. I simply no longer believe caring means I have to fix them. She was silent. Then she said, Megan is devastated. That one reached me. How is she? You should ask her. She isn't speaking to me. Can you blame her? I thought about it. Yes, I said quietly. A little. Patricia hung up. Megan did not call. 1 week became 2. 2 became 6. I sent birthday cards to the grandchildren. I texted Megan once to ask whether I could see them. She replied politely that things were complicated and she needed time. I did not push. That was one of the hardest boundaries I had ever kept. Every maternal instinct told me to drive to her house, take food, apologize for whatever would get the door open, offer help, offer money, offer anything. Then I would remember William's letter. You will want to rescue Megan from whatever consequences brought you to this letter. Think before you do. So I thought. And waited. Grant faced consequences too. Not ruin, consequences. Because he worked in commercial real estate, his involvement in presenting an overly optimistic picture of family financial resources created questions inside his firm. He was not fired, but a promotion he had expected did not happen. His role on a major client account was reduced. According to Megan, months later, Grant blamed Charles at first, then Megan, then me. Apparently blaming himself came much later. Thanksgiving arrived before reconciliation did. For the first time in Megan's life, I did not spend any part of Thanksgiving with my daughter. The week before I bought a turkey. Then I stood in the grocery store staring at it and realized I was shopping for a family dinner that did not exist. I put it back. I bought a small chicken instead. Thanksgiving morning was brutal. I woke early out of habit. For decades that day had begun with William chopping celery while I complained that he made the pieces too large. Megan used to steal pieces of pie before breakfast. After she married Grant, the traditions changed, but I had always seen her somehow. That year there was nothing. At 11 I received a photograph. The grandchildren standing beside Megan and Grant at the Whitmore's house. Patricia's dining room was visible behind them. Everyone looked beautiful. I stared at the photograph until the screen dimmed. Then I cried. I nearly called Megan. My finger was on her name. I was ready to say whatever was necessary. I'm sorry. Let's forget everything. Tell me what you need. Maybe we can revisit the trustee arrangement. Anything to make the loneliness stop. Then I asked myself a question. If Megan returned because I restored access to something financial, what exactly would I be getting back, my daughter? Or the old arrangement? I put the phone down. That afternoon, I ate chicken with my neighbor Helen, who had lost her sister earlier that year. We drank too much coffee and watched an old movie. It was not the Thanksgiving I wanted, but it was peaceful, and I learned something. Loneliness hurt. Being used hurt differently. Loneliness left an empty chair. Being used made you question whether anyone wanted you in the chair at all. I decided I could survive the first. I no longer wanted to survive the second. In December, I returned to the literacy nonprofit, where I had volunteered after retiring from the school system. I had stopped going regularly when William became sick. Then Megan's needs had filled the empty spaces afterward. The first morning back, I helped a 56-year-old woman named Denise prepare for a high school equivalency exam. When she correctly worked through a reading passage she had struggled with for 20 minutes, she smiled so widely that I remembered why I had loved being a librarian. Not because books were quiet, because knowledge made people larger. I started volunteering twice a week, then 3 times. I called old friends. Helen and I began having lunch on Wednesdays. I joined a book group I had declined twice because Megan often needed me available on Thursday mornings. I stopped organizing my calendar around requests that had not yet been made. Slowly, something embarrassing became obvious. My life had become smaller long before Megan called the Whitmores her real family. I had helped shrink it. I had made being needed the proof that I was loved. Without realizing it, I had trained myself to wait for my daughter's phone calls. Now the phone was quieter, and my life became louder, not happier every day. Healing is not that simple. Some nights I still sat in William's chair and wondered whether holding my boundary was worth losing Megan, but I no longer confused pain with proof that the boundary was wrong. 4 months passed. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang while I was shelving donated books at the literacy center. Megan. I stared at her name. My heart began pounding. I answered. Hello? For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she said, Mom. Her voice sounded different, not angry, not defensive, just tired. Yes, can I come see you? I closed my eyes. When tonight, if that's okay. I waited for the rest, a request, a financial emergency, something about Charles, something about Grant. Nothing came. Is everything all right with the children? Yes. Do you need money? There was a painful silence. No. Is this about the trust? No. Grant, not exactly. I leaned against the bookshelf. What do you want to talk about, you and me? Those 3 words nearly broke me. I swallowed. All right. I can come around 7. That's fine. Another pause. Then Megan said, Mom. Yes, I'm coming alone. The call ended. I stood there holding the phone against my chest. 4 months earlier, Megan had walked into my kitchen carrying papers she wanted me to sign. Now she was coming back with no documents, no requests, and no husband. For the first time since this began, I allowed myself to hope she might finally be coming home for something that had nothing to do with what she expected to inherit. My daughter came alone. At 6:55 that evening, I heard a car pull into my driveway. I had been pretending not to watch the clock. For the previous hour, I had wiped an already clean kitchen counter 3 times, rearranged the mail, and made a pot of coffee. I wasn't sure either of us would drink. When the doorbell rang, I did not rush. That was new for me. For most of Megan's life, she never needed to ring the bell. She simply walked in. But that evening, she waited outside until I opened the door. She was alone. No Grant, no children, no folder, no documents. Just my daughter. Hi, Mom. Hi. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Then I stepped aside. Come in. She walked into the house slowly. When we reached the kitchen, Megan stopped. I forgot how much I missed this room. I looked around. It was the same kitchen where I had packed thousands of school lunches. The same room where Megan had done homework at the table, while William cooked dinner badly and enthusiastically. The same room where she had asked how much my estate was worth. Coffee, I asked. She gave me a small smile. Yes. I poured 2 cups. Megan wrapped both hands around hers. I don't know how to start. The beginning usually works. She almost laughed. Then her eyes filled. Grant and I are having problems. My first instinct was immediate. What happened? Then I heard how quickly I had slipped into rescue mode. I stopped myself. Megan noticed. We're not separated, she said. Not yet. I'm sorry. Are you? The question was not hostile. It was ashamed. Of course. After everything he said to you, I don't want your marriage to fail. She looked down. I thought maybe you would. I wanted Grant to stop treating my estate like a business opportunity. That's not the same thing. Megan nodded. For a while she said nothing. Then she began telling me about the Whitmores. Not the version I knew. The version she had been trying to survive. When Megan first met Grant, his family intimidated her. Charles knew politicians, bankers, developers, attorneys. Patricia remembered which wine belonged with which course and seemed to know everyone worth knowing in Richmond. Their holidays looked like magazine photographs. Their friends owned vacation homes. Their children had attended expensive schools. Megan had grown up comfortably but differently. William and I had money because we saved it. The Whitmores displayed theirs. I always felt like they were evaluating me, Megan said. Did they say that? Not directly. What did they do? Little things. Patricia corrected how Megan set a formal table. Charles joked about public schools. Grant once explained that Megan's college was good, just not where Whitmore's usually go. Each comment alone sounded insignificant. Together they had created a message. You are welcome here. But prove you deserved to stay. I wanted Patricia to like me, Megan admitted. I know. I knew you were trying very hard. Why didn't you say something? What could I have said? I don't know. You were an adult. You loved Grant. She nodded. I started changing things. I noticed. My clothes. Yes, the way I talked. A little. Even what I ordered in restaurants. That one surprised me. Megan laughed sadly. Patricia once told me ordering sweet wine made me look unsophisticated. And you listened for 3 years. I shook my head. You love sweet wine. I know. For a moment we both smiled. Then her expression became serious. When Charles started having trouble with Riverstone, Grant saw it as his chance. To do what? Prove himself. Megan explained that Grant had always lived under Charles's shadow. Charles respected success, not effort. Grant believed helping secure the refinancing would finally earn him a larger role in Whitmore development. And you wanted to help Grant prove himself. Yes. So you tried to prove yourself too. Her eyes filled. Yes. She looked at me. That's where the trust came in. I stayed quiet. I knew it wasn't mine. I know. I need you to believe that. I believe you knew legally. She absorbed the distinction. I think I started telling myself a story. What story? That because I would probably inherit someday, mentioning it wasn't really using anything. I said nothing. And because I was successor trustee, I thought describing that role made me look responsible. Important. To whom, them? There it was. Megan wiped her eyes. When Charles started including me in financial conversations, I felt like I finally belonged. And when I changed the trustee, it was like you pulled away the thing I had used to prove my value. I felt sadness rather than anger. Megan, your value was never in my trust. I know that now. Did Grant? She hesitated. I think he knew. I don't think he cared enough. That hurt differently. What is happening between you two? We're in counseling. I nodded. Good. He's angry about the consequences at work. For a while he blamed you. I know. I let him. That admission mattered. Then he blamed me. Then his father. And now the counselor keeps asking him what decisions were his. I almost smiled. Sounds like a good counselor. Megan did smile. Then she became quiet again. I need to tell you something about that anniversary dinner. I waited. When I said they were my real family. She stopped. You don't have to repeat it. Yes, I do. Her voice shook. Patricia had been complaining that I kept trying to split holidays. Grant said I needed to stop making everyone accommodate my mother. I felt the old wound open. Megan continued. I was angry, embarrassed, and I wanted them to hear me choose them. That was brutally honest. So you used me to prove loyalty. Yes. Did you mean it? She thought for a long time. Part of me did in that moment. I appreciated that she did not give me the easy answer. And the rest of me knew exactly how much it would hurt you. My eyes burned. Then why say it? Because I thought you were safe. I frowned. What does that mean? You were the one person I believed would never leave. She began crying. I thought I could hurt you, disappoint you, ignore you, and eventually you would forgive me, because you're my mother. I looked down at my coffee. You treated the safest person in your life as the person who required the least care. Yes. That sentence sat between us. It was perhaps the first time Megan had taken full responsibility without immediately explaining it away. I reached across the table, not to rescue her, just to touch her hand. She held mine. I do want a relationship with you, I said. She cried harder. But it cannot be the relationship we had. I understand. No financial discussions unless they're necessary. Okay. No trust documents. Okay. You will not be successor trustee again. She nodded. No inheritance will be used in your financial planning while I'm alive. I understand. If Grant or his parents ask about my assets, you tell them those matters are private. I will. And the grandchildren cannot become messengers between us. Never. I squeezed her hand. These aren't punishments. I know. They're boundaries. I know. I studied her face. Do you? She nodded. I think I'm finally learning the difference. We sat there for a while. Then Megan surprised me. Even if you offered the trustee role back someday, I wouldn't take it. I searched her face. Why? Because Dad was right. My heart stopped. What? She looked toward the hallway. I don't mean I know what he said. I mean I know how he thought. I relaxed slightly. He always believed people shouldn't manage money when emotions were involved. Yes. Megan wiped her cheeks. And I let my need to belong affect my judgment. If something happened to you tomorrow, I don't think I should be the person deciding how everything is administered. It was painful to hear, and strangely healing. That's a very different Megan from the one who sat here 4 months ago. I know. I'm not ready to pretend everything is fixed. I don't expect you to. I may still get angry. You should. I may not trust you for a while. I understand. She looked around the kitchen. Can I still come here? My throat tightened. Yes. That was the question underneath everything. Not, can I manage the trust? Not, am I still inheriting? Can I still come home? Yes, I repeated. You can still come here. Megan stood. This time when she hugged me, I hugged her back. I did not promise everything would return to normal. I no longer wanted normal. Normal had been me giving and Megan assuming. Normal had been silence disguised as peace. We needed something better. When she left, she did not take anything with her. No check, no signature, no promise. Only the possibility that we might begin again. And for the first time, that felt like enough. Who my real family became. 1 year after I changed my trust, I woke on Christmas Eve to the smell of cinnamon and coffee. For a few seconds, I thought William was downstairs. Grief still did that occasionally. It gave me one beautiful second before memory returned. Then I heard laughter in the kitchen. Megan. I smiled. She had arrived early with the children. Not because I had demanded Christmas Eve. Not because Patricia had surrendered Christmas Day. And not because Megan had decided one family had to defeat the other. She had simply called 3 weeks earlier and said, Mom, would you like us to spend Christmas Eve with you? We'll see Grant's parents tomorrow. I had answered carefully. Is that what you want? Yes. Then I'd love it. That was how our relationship worked now. Questions, answers, no assumptions. It had taken us a year to learn something that sounded embarrassingly simple. Love worked better when nobody treated it like a debt. I went downstairs. My granddaughter was standing on a chair stirring pancake batter while Megan supervised. My grandson was trying to convince her that chocolate chips counted as breakfast nutrition. Grandma, he ran toward me. I hugged him. Megan turned. Merry Christmas, Mom. Merry Christmas. She kissed my cheek. There was no dramatic music, no grand apology, no announcement that everything had been forgiven. Real healing had turned out to be quieter than that. It happened through ordinary things. Phone calls returned, lunches kept, promises honored, boundaries respected. Trust rebuilt one uneventful day at a time. The Martin Family Living Trust still had a professional successor trustee. That had not changed. Commonwealth Fiduciary Services remained designated to take over administration if I died or became unable to manage things myself. Rebecca remained trust protector under the provisions we had established. Megan remained a beneficiary. My grandchildren remained protected. The arrangement that had once nearly torn my family apart eventually became something none of us discussed very often. That was exactly how I wanted it. My estate had returned to its proper place, in the background of my life, not at the center of my relationships. 6 months after Megan and I reconciled, I met with Rebecca again. Not because something had gone wrong, because I wanted to make one additional adjustment. I created a clearly defined education provision for my grandchildren. The funds would be professionally managed and could be used for qualified education expenses under the trust's terms. Megan and Grant could not redirect the money toward investments, business debts, mortgages, or lifestyle expenses. When I explained it to Megan, I watched her carefully. A year earlier, she might have heard distrust. This time she nodded. That makes sense. That's all. She almost laughed. What do you want me to do? Argue I was preparing myself. Mom, if you want to help the kids with education, I'm grateful. And if you want someone independent managing it, that's probably better for everyone. I nearly cried. Not because she agreed, because she understood. Grant changed too, though more slowly. I did not suddenly become close to him. Some wounds require distance before they can become scars. But he began taking responsibility for what had happened. Counseling helped, so did consequences. His professional setback forced him to confront how much of his ambition had been tied to impressing Charles. For years, Grant had complained privately about living under his father's shadow, while simultaneously arranging his entire career around earning Charles's approval. Megan finally saw the similarity. She had been chasing Patricia's acceptance. Grant had been chasing Charles's. They had both built their marriage around proving themselves to people who were supposed to love them already. They began separating their household finances from Whitmore Development Group. Grant stopped participating in his father's refinancing strategies. He remained in commercial real estate, but he no longer treated Charles's company as his inevitable future. Their marriage was not magically repaired, but it became more honest. That was better. Charles survived Riverstone, just not in the form he had imagined. Whitmore Development sold the parcel Rebecca had mentioned and restructured part of its debt. The original expansion plan was reduced. Charles hated that. For several months, according to Megan, he talked about the project as though someone had stolen his future. Eventually, however, the smaller version moved forward. That mattered to me. Not because I wanted Charles to succeed, not because I wanted him to fail, because his survival proved something important. I had never been his only option. I had simply been the easiest option he hoped would never say no. Patricia and I remained polite. Nothing more. The first time I saw her after everything happened was at my granddaughter's school concert. She approached me during intermission. Aubrey. Patricia. For a second I wondered whether she would apologize. She didn't. Neither did I. She asked about the literacy nonprofit. I asked about Charles. We talked for 5 minutes. Then we returned to our seats. That was enough. I no longer needed Patricia to understand me. That freedom surprised me. For years I had wanted the Whitmores to see that I was not needy, unsophisticated, jealous, or dependent. Then one day I realized defending myself to people committed to misunderstanding me was another form of asking permission. So I stopped. My own life expanded. I continued volunteering at the Literacy Center 3 mornings a week. Denise passed her high school equivalency exam. The day she received the results, she called me before she called almost anyone else. I did it, Aubrey. Yes, you did. I cried harder over that phone call than she did. Helen and I took a short trip to Charleston in the spring. I joined the book group permanently. I replaced the old sofa William had hated but refused to throw away. That felt strangely disloyal for approximately 2 days. Then I discovered the new sofa was much more comfortable and decided William would have forgiven me. I even changed his office. Not completely. His books stayed, the brass lamp stayed, the wooden pencil holder Megan made as a child stayed. But I moved a reading chair near the window and began using the room myself. For 6 years I had preserved it like a museum to a life that had ended. Now it became part of the life I was still living. William's letter remained in the estate box. I never showed it to Megan. I still believe that was the right decision. She did not need to know her father had predicted her vulnerability. What mattered was that she had recognized it herself. That Christmas Eve after breakfast, Megan found me standing in William's office. She leaned against the doorway, thinking about Dad always around Christmas. She walked in. Her eyes landed on the pencil holder. I can't believe you kept that. Your father would have come back from the dead if I threw it away. She laughed. Then she sat in the reading chair. Mom. Yes. Do you ever wish you hadn't changed the trust? I thought carefully. No. She nodded. I'm glad. That surprised me. Really, yes. She looked toward the window. If you had changed it back because I cried enough, I don't think I would have learned anything. William's words came back to me. Sometimes consequences are the only teacher left after advice has failed. I sat across from her. I never wanted the consequence to be losing you. You didn't. We came close. I know. Megan looked at me. I thought family meant the people you prove your loyalty to. And now I think family is where loyalty doesn't require you to betray someone else. I smiled. That took you long enough. She laughed. So I'm still grounded. At 39, absolutely. We both laughed then. And for one beautiful moment I could feel William in the room without feeling only his absence. Later that afternoon, Grant arrived. We exchanged gifts. The grandchildren decorated cookies badly. Megan burned one tray. At 6, they left for home. The next morning they would visit Charles and Patricia. I did not feel abandoned. I did not count hours. I did not compare gifts. I did not need Megan to reject the Whitmores to prove she loved me. That had been another lesson. Boundaries were not about winning. They were about making competition unnecessary. After everyone left, I stood alone in the living room beside the Christmas tree. The house was quiet, but it no longer felt empty. A year earlier, I had believed changing one name in a legal document might destroy my family. Instead, it exposed the version of my family that was already unhealthy. It showed me where money had replaced assumptions with entitlement. It showed Megan how desperately she wanted approval. It showed Grant how much of his ambition belonged to his father. And it showed me something about myself I should have learned years earlier. Love without boundaries was not always generosity. Sometimes it was fear. Fear that saying no would make people leave. Fear that being unnecessary meant being unloved. Fear that protecting yourself made you selfish. I had spent decades building financial security with William. But after he died, I had nearly surrendered something more valuable than money. My right to define the terms of my own life. William's greatest inheritance to me was never the $3.8 million trust. It was the preparation behind it. The reminder that love and authority were different, that forgiveness and access were different, that helping and rescuing were different. Megan was still my daughter. She would still inherit under my estate plan if circumstances remained as they were. But she would never again manage my trust. And neither of us needed that role to prove we were family. I turned off the Christmas tree lights and looked around the home William and I had built. For years I had wondered who considered me family. At 69, I finally understood that the more important question was whether I was treating myself like someone worth protecting.